So I reached out to you. You put me in touch with your team. Of course, we hired our first ISA right out of the bat. And then and just about a month ago, a couple weeks ago, we hired our second one. And so we are using our ISAs, 2 full-time ISAs.
All right, guys, we are back, and I've got a great one for you today. We're talking with Michael Lorino from a really interesting company that if you're trying to, buy or sell a home in 2025, you should remember this name, AssumeList. AssumeList. Michael runs a company, and we started working, with him and his team about a year ago. And I think it's been a very fruitful partnership. Let's see what Michael says. But it's been a great working with them and seeing the results. How they've grown. They now have a team of 2 ISAs. And I see him everywhere. Right, he's rocking on the social media. The content. I love it. And he was gracious enough to give us a little bit of his time today and kind of talk about what he's up to, a little bit about his company, and why he kind of built an ISA team. So Michael, jump in, tell us, number one, what's AssumeList for the people, for the uninitiated, the lay person out there, and I mean real estate agents, because I know most of you guys, maybe you've heard of assumptions, but not really, right? So what is AssumeList? What's the opportunity you guys are going after? And tell us more about that.
Absolutely. Gustavo, thank you very much for the invitation to come on today. I'm super thrilled to be here. Always a pleasure to work with you, and certainly the opportunity to come on to your podcast and share a little bit about our business and why we're really excited and what's going on with real estate right now. So Mike Lorino, I've been in real estate for 16 years. I'm a retired Marine. You can tell from the flag behind me, but I'm a retired Marine officer, 20 years in the Marine Corps. And so as I've been doing real estate for, like I said, 16 years, but as I was getting ready towards retirement, right, during the 2021, 2022 timeframe, right, interest rates really bottomed. And then all of a sudden, right in 2022, interest rates started spiking. What I realized was, and what my clients were telling me is, hey, Mike, interest rates are just spiked. We're at 6.5%, we're at 7%. A couple months ago, I could have bought a home for 2.5% or 3%, and here we are at 6.5%, 7%. I'm just priced out of the market. I can't buy a place. That's a significant price hike and the cost, the monthly mortgage payment is way too high. I think we're going to rent. And I was hearing that time and time again. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. I started thinking like, there's got to be a solution out there. And so because of my expertise with VA loans and my knowledge working with military families, and of course, being a military, service member, a veteran myself, I knew that there was another solution. And then what I realized is, all government-backed mortgages, in this case, predominantly with VA loans, but includes FHA and USDA as well, they have an assumable clause to them, right? So every government-backed mortgage, VA, FHA, USDA loans, are allowed to be assumed by another buyer. And what that means is a buyer can assume or purchase a home from a seller that has one of these mortgages with the exact same terms, interest rate, mortgage payment, loan balance, everything exactly the same. And in the process of that purchase, that buyer gets to take advantage of that existing interest rate. And as you know, a lot of homes that were purchased or refinanced in that kind of 2019 to 2022, first half of 2022 timeframe, all had these amazingly low interest rates, 2.25, 2.5, 2.75% rate, which is unheard of today. I just got a quote from a lender today, 6.5%, on upwards of 7%, depending on VA versus conventional. And so, the idea of buying a home today with a 2.5% interest rate, that's what we call, that's a time machine, right? We're able to turn back the clock and help buyers now in, spring of 2025, buy a home with an interest rate that hasn't been available since 2021, 2022. Right. And so that's what we do. That's what AssumeList it's a platform, it's an ecosystem to help buyers identify these homes with assumable mortgages. So it's a search platform, but it's also it's an entire ecosystem that solves, we call them the four obstacles or the 4 pain points with assumable mortgages. The first one, these 4 obstacles, first one is we call the needle in the haystack. How do you find these homes for sale with assumable mortgages? They're not advertised necessarily. 90% of all homes listed for sale that have an assumable mortgage are nowhere to be found. You cannot search the remarks section. They're not listed or any way advertised as having an assumable home. So you have to find a very bespoke, unique search product, a platform that does that. And ours is, the largest in the country. We have the most robust platform. And so it's designed specifically to support agents. So we can help find every home for sale with an assumable mortgage. And we also have access to every off-market home with assumable mortgage. So we call that needle in the haystack. We solve that problem of identifying which homes have assumable mortgages. The second obstacle is learning about assumptions. We call it misconceptions in the marketplace. And there's a lot of myths and misconceptions and factually incorrect information about how assumptions work, what the rules are, what the entitlement requirements are, eligibility, how long does it take to close a home? Do you need to be a veteran to do a VA assumption? All of those rules and regulations and policies, there's a lot of bad information. In fact, if you Google search the advantages and disadvantages of assumable mortgages, Google AI will run some algorithm and it'll spit out some results. About 70 to 80% of the time, there's going to be bad information produced in those results, depending on how you phrase the question and what you're looking for. There will be bad information, factually incorrect information that's provided to the general public because of all these things that were kind of thought about, and maybe agents wrote up blog articles about how their assumption from 3 years ago failed, right? And so there's a lot of bad information floating out there. We solve that because we literally are the de facto experts. I teach assumptions to agents around the country. I'm on the phone literally on the daily basis with the Department of Veterans Affairs, talking through policies and circulars and regulations and guides and how they all work and what are the rules. And frankly, I'm spending a lot of time even educating servicers and lenders who are supposed to be processing these assumptions and sending them the same document saying, no, that's not how this works. Let me share with you the actual federal law on how this works. And so there's a lot of misconceptions. So we solve that by, we call it obstacle number 2, which is misconception in the marketplace. And specifically for agents, our service provides fact sheets and guides and videos and documentation. We even have addendums that we present or we recommend our agents use in their offers to help them kind of make these Loctite, secure contracts when they submit offers to assume a loan for their clients. So we address obstacle 2, which is this misconceptions piece, by really equipping agents and vis-a-vis through them, their clients, buyers and sellers who are looking to do this, with all the correct factual information sourced back to the government documents, how these actually work. Third obstacle, really important one. A lot of people early on said, hey, Mike, I really want to do an assumption, but the home I want to buy has a $200,000 cash gap or a $400,000 cash gap, or sometimes we call it a down payment, which is the difference between the loan balance, which is the loan balance, which is what the buyer would be assuming, versus the sales price, which is the purchase price the buyer has to buy the home for. And that difference can be a pretty substantial number. And that difference is generally what is derived as the down payment requirement that the buyer would have to come up with. So a lot of people were really wanted to do an assumption, but they don't have all the cash needed because over time, people pay their mortgages down, but the price of homes or the appreciation kind of, helps homes go up in value over time. And so it kind of goes up and down at the same time. That cash gap grows with time. And so we solve that by partnering with lenders who specialize in these really creative loan products. We call them purchase HELOCs and bridge loans that really enable buyers to move forward with an assumption while taking out what we call a purchase HELOC. They can pull equity out of the home that they're buying at settlement and then use that equity to pay the seller so they can come up with all the cash, or they can come up with the money needed for the down payment without necessarily having all the cash themselves. And what's really cool is you only need a minimum of 5% down to do it. Generally speaking, we recommend 10%. So 10% of the purchase price. Any amount of cash needed above and beyond that can be borrowed through a second mortgage. And in most cases, even with the second mortgage, there's what's called a blended interest rate, which we kind of coined that term. We have a blended rate that enables us to calculate what the monthly mortgage payment is when you factor in both the primary and the secondary loan. And in most cases, that blended interest rate is still in the 3s, 3.75, 3.8, wow. 3.9, which is still significantly better than taking a new loan at 6.5 or 7.
Yeah, because the assumable amount is still, in most cases, is the larger amount. Like
That's
the
right.
bigger
It's a
of the
weighted
two is going
average.
to be, yeah, it's going to be, if you got, 600,000 at 2%, the extra 100,000 at six is not, like is way more digestible, right? Like way more palatable. I love that because that's, so I'll jump in here real quick. That's usually what trips up the agents.
Yep.
People understand. I think generally agents kind of get the assumable part. Oh, I can assume it. Great. And they're like, yeah, but there's these situations you run into, right? The gap, and then there's this and that, and then you kind of, you can always tell you're gonna lose them. What? Oh no, this will never work. Like, no, hold on. I can't come up with $80,000 to as a down payment. And like, well, let's take a look at that. So that's problem number three, because this is gonna be a common problem, especially in some of these harder markets, right? Higher price homes that have really gone up since COVID. You're gonna have a gap there for sure. You're gonna have a gap for 100%. I love that you guys address that. That's usually a lot of the source of the misconceptions too, right? For a lot of agents.
Yep, exactly right. Yeah. So obstacle number three solves that cash gap crisis for a lot of buyers out there. And we really, we've done a lot of, I personally have done a lot of assumptions with those second mortgage products. And remember, most lenders do not offer that. You can't go, most people go to their local, lender partner that agents work with lenders for, years and years and years. And then they call them and say, hey, do you offer a purchase HELOC? And they're like, most of them will say, no, it's not something we do. Most lenders do not offer second mortgages. So when we first kind of created this, we call it primary plus secondary strategy, where we have the buyer pre-approved for the purchase of the home, right? $800,000 purchase price, $600,000, whatever the purchase price is, they have to be pre-approved for that loan. But then we also simultaneously pre-approve them for a second mortgage. So if they need a second mortgage, a purchase HELOC, they're qualified for it through one loan application. So one application gets them access to primary plus a secondary if it's needed. So they're not trying to scramble at the last second if they find a home. Maybe they got a pre-approval letter from their bank or their credit union, and then but none of them offer second mortgages. And now they got to go solve that, figure out a way to have a second loan, and that's where the problems come in. So we solve that for our agents and buyers who work with us. Number fourth is the last one. A lot of agents who have had a lot of problems getting assumptions approved in the past. It takes 6 months or 4 months or 9 months to get an assumption approved. So we solved that because we partnered with one of the most experienced, we call them a transaction management company. We actually coined the term the easy button team. So we actually just launched this on our platform today. So there's an easy button module where you click that button and it introduces you to this team where they facilitate the assumption on behalf of the buyers, sellers, and the agents. They will take the entire responsibility. They know they have a Rolodex of every single processor in the country. I would say certainly the top 90% of all the servicers who hold VA loans and FHA loans across the country. There's a lot of smaller regional banks that that always exist, but generally speaking, they will have access to the direct points of contact, managers, processors at all the major lending institutions who process assumptions, and they know all the forms that are needed, all the documents that are required, and so they do all this work on the front end, and then they handle that and facilitate the assumption so that it can be closed in as quick as it possibly can, right? And so a lot of people, a lot of agents got frustrated and are still to this day frustrated with assumptions, and assumptions have a bad taste in agents' mouths from the lack of support and lack of understanding and how assumptions work. And that has tended to result in a lot of deals taking 6 months or 9 months to get approved. A lot of agents have had transactions, literally contracts fall apart because they can't get the lenders to approve. A lot of that has to do with just not really understanding the process or not knowing how to get through the assumption. And so we help solve that through our Easy Button team, who knows exactly what to do, what documents are needed. They have points of contact and direct access to managers at all the major lending institutions and servicers who manage assumptions around the country and can facilitate that transaction. They charge a flat monthly fee. We don't make any money on it, so it's a service provided by them. Flat monthly fee paid at closing. I think it's like $1,900. And it's paid at closing. So the buyer typically pays this, or sometimes the buyers and the sellers split the cost. Paid at closing, so they only pay it if the loan is approved. And it takes a lot of the risk out of the process because they handle all of the assumption elements of the transaction so that the agents and the buyers and the sellers aren't trying to figure out, well, did you send it? Do I need to send this? where's the holdup? Who needs to do what, right? So a lot of that uncertainty that exists with assumptions, and that entire risk is taken out of the process, and they handle it for us. And that's obstacle number 4, or the issue that we solved. Number 4 is the servicer resistance through our transaction management partnership with that team.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that's another one you hear very frequently, right? That, oh my goodness, it takes too long. Oh, I asked about it, and then the lender, that lender in particular, said, oh, it'll take forever. Like, even the lenders would kind of dissuade them from doing something like that. Like, say, oh, because they didn't know. Like, if you have never done it before, or the last one you did took 9 months, you're not going to recommend that to a lot of people unless you do this every day. Like, this is all you do, right? And they're like, no, there's a way to do this, this much faster. So I love that,
vast majority, I don't think I mentioned this. Yeah. The vast majority of assumptions right now close between 30 and 45 days. 30 to 45 days. Wow. About 90% of assumptions, can close in less than 45 days.
I love that, because that's a stone's throw away from a typical transaction. It's a week more, right, than a typical, and not even a week more. Some of them will take 45 days. You know what I'm talking about, low appraisals. You know what I mean, right? So that it'll take a little bit longer than you expect. That's a typical deal, I think, in most areas. So I love that. So getting people to know what they're doing really helps. It seems like, and like I said, I give them this analogy with my team. A fire is a tragedy to everyone but the fire department, because that's what they do. That's their job, right? Like, so would you rather work with a guy with a bucket, or would you rather work with the fire department, right? Like, which one are we talking about here? Because for one guy, this is a tragedy. For another guy, this is what they do. They're a pro. They're a pro at this. So you guys are the fire department for assumptions, right? And you guys can get it done, the right way. So I absolutely love that. So Mike, I mean, you started this company, right? You got this idea, you had your foot in real estate, you were in the military, you kind of knew that, interesting overlap of skills there. And, you transitioned to being real estate full time, and, you saw this opportunity, right? You're like, hey, so I remember 2022. It was a brutal awakening. It was not fun to be in 2022, in the industry, right? Working with our clients. It was a tough transition, going from 2%, 2 to 2.9 to, like, almost 8 a year later.
Yeah, over 7 for sure.
Yeah, 7. Almost at the end of 2023, you almost touched 8%, like almost for like an average national average. It was crazy time to be in real estate. Definitely very, very challenging. You decide to build this company. You're helping these people out. Where did the idea of having an ISA, come in? like how does that fit into this puzzle? Because there's a lot. You're starting a company. There's a lot of things you got to figure out. There's a million things. The back end, your technology base, like a SaaS company, the SaaS part of it, the offer, build your servicing agents, and your servicing consumers. This is the same thing that Zillow does. Right? They service both the consumer and they service agents. So what were your thoughts on bringing on an ISA? Why? Like, why? How? Walk us through that process.
Absolutely,
it was a year ago. So what you can remember.
I know this is easy for me. So the idea for AssumeList came out in kind of fall 2022, when rates really started spiking, and all of a sudden I just see the business turn upside down. Nobody wanted to buy homes. It was just like everything sat. It was stagnant. Nobody really wanted to do any business. I'm like, there's got to be a solution. So I designed AssumeList. We launched AssumeList. It was about 9 months of development, and it was really kind of late 2023, fall 2023. I beta tested it with a couple of local agents in my home market, and I'm like, is this viable? Do you think people would pay for this? Is this a service that has any value added? And overwhelming, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is great. So we officially launched like December 2023 in my home market. And I'm in the Northern Virginia, DC, National Capital Region. So we launched in late 2023, and then really kind of spring 2024, January, February, March, going into April was when things really started taking off. So we actually officially went live early 2024. Rates are still high. I knew they would remain high. I mean, we're not going back down to 2 and 3% rates. Like, that's just not a thing anymore. So people are just like looking for hacks, right? How do I beat this interest rate hike? And so we picked up a lot of agents and a lot of buyers that were really learning about assumptions. What is it? How do I use it? I want to buy a home. Can you help me? So in my home market, we started getting a lot of attention, and I realized, wow, if this is as strong it is in my home market, let me expand into other markets around the country. So then for pretty much spring of 2024, all the way through really now to today, we've systematically just kept expanding into new markets and new states around the country. And so right now we operate in 22 states around the country. We cover, I think, about 70% of the nation's VA assumption industry. So all the major metropolitan areas, most major military installations around the country, which is where the preponderance of the VA loans are concentrate. A lot of the major metropolitan areas, which is where a lot of the FHA loans are. And so we cover, over 4 million. We have over 4 million assumable homes inside of our database, which are all searchable, all off-market and on-market actively listed homes. We have a direct connection to the MLS and all the markets in which we service. A lot of people ask me, why aren't you in all 50 states? Well, to operate successfully, we have to know when homes come up for sale. And so we need a direct connection to the MLS, and that's not cheap, right? There's a lot of compliance rules, MLS regulation. I have to have brokerage involvement, right? I have to get, a lot of development costs, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to systematically do this. But it got to the point, kind of summer last year, and all of a sudden, like just massive expansion and interest. And all of a sudden, not only are we getting people signing up using the platform, but now we're getting people that are asking questions, and we need to be able to field questions and provide a higher level of support. I mean, there's only so much I can do and my team can do. And so it's like, we need to get some ISAs. We need to field these questions and connect to these buyers with other people who are using our platform in those states to connect them and hand them off and refer them out and answer questions and help facilitate more. We want to help more buyers and more sellers do assumptions, right? We want to help agents learn about assumptions so they can grow their business, right? So as you said, we're a B2B and a B2C company, a SaaS company. And so I can't do that on my own. I was on the phone like 14, 16 hours a day, call after call after call. It's like, this is not good. This is not healthy. I need help. So I called you up. I think we connected on Facebook or something like that, because I knew you from Lab Coat Agents. And obviously, everybody spoke very highly of you. I did my own independent research. I'm like, I need to call 𝐭𝐡𝐞𝐫. He runs an ISA company. I researched everybody, and you kept coming out on top. So I reached out to you. You put me in touch with your team. Of course, we hired our first ISA right out of the bat. And then, just a month ago, a couple weeks ago, we hired our second one. And so we are using our ISAs, 2 full-time ISAs who are really doing inbound and outbound calls, right? So they are taking inbound calls. We are making outbound calls. Like I said, we get about 15,000 visitors a month to our website. We're getting hundreds of inquiries a month. Actually, people submitting forms or asking for help or want to be connected with an agent, or how does assumptions work? Can you provide me with some information? So really, they're acting as a customer service representative / ISA, because they're doing referrals and introductions to agents. In fact, I'm a referral partner. My real estate team locally here in Virginia are taking referrals from our own ISAs from buyers and sellers who are looking for help in our home market. So we're receiving referrals from the ISAs from the AssumeList team, and it's worked out really, really well. I mean, they are on the phone helping people. I listen on the calls sometimes, and it's really, really it's really rewarding to know that these people are often just so mesmerized that this even exists. And frankly, a lot of the responses we're getting is, wow, I didn't even know about this. Thank you so much. How come I didn't know about this before? Why aren't more people doing this? Like, that's the kind of responses we often get when we're having these conversations with buyers and sellers. And frankly, sometimes even with agents. Like, a lot of agents say, wow, I wish I knew about this 6 months ago, kind of thing. And they're signing up, and we're training agents. We have daily training Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Our head of training, Nora Simpson, offers that. So anybody can go to AssumeList.com, right on the homepage, right there at the top of the homepage. You can sign up free of charge, no cost. Anybody can come, and we offer free training on assumptions. Oftentimes our ISAs will participate in that and listen in, because many times they may follow up with somebody who participated on that call, and they're now facilitating, that referral or answering follow-on questions from clients or agents. Our ISAs talk to both. They're having conversations with, and frankly, answering many of the same questions that buyers are asking. Agents are asking those same questions because everybody just wants to learn more about assumptions.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's great because I think the role of ISA is that connector piece, right? It's taking
Mhm.
that inbound opportunity, right? And their job is to really hand it off and serve it up to an agent. That's really what they're there for. You don't want to miss any calls. You don't want to take too long to respond to these folks. That's always challenging for agents, let alone your team. Even real estate agents can struggle with that, right? It's the same challenge. The same challenge. The client expects, instant response. They want a quick resolution. They want that instant gratification. And the closer you can get to that, you're much more likely to succeed. And I saw this study, last year, 2024, Mike Del Prete, an analyst of the industry, he did a secret shopping across the whole country, right? 15 markets. They had his team register on these websites, right? For different real estate agents, right? 47% of leads were never called. Not one time, right? Not one time. So that is bonkers. I just, and this is
Wow.
recent. This is recent, right? So I think the consumer expectation, I think we can do a better job there, right? So I think you're having your ISA team there is to get that response, to get that real person, talking to them, informing them of the information and qualifying them, and then getting them ready for that handoff, to the agent. And that's how that typically works. A buyer comes in, they want information, and the ISA talks to them and then hands them off to an agent, right? That's usually what the flow looks like.
Mhm. That's exactly right. We have to, we kind of qualify the buyer too. Like, hey, what are you looking to do? What is your financial qualifications? And we ask them, are you a veteran? Because depending on whether they have their own VA entitlement, may make things easier or less easy to do an assumption, especially when it comes to VA loans. You can, just for the benefit of your audience, a non-veteran can assume a VA loan, right? It just requires the seller to be willing to partition and part out that portion of their entitlement tied to the loan. And about 20%, 1 out of 5 sellers are willing to do that. They just don't have a need for their VA benefits going forward for various reasons. So the ISA is asking a bunch of questions. Hey, how much cash do you plan to have available? Because we talk about the whole cash gap, right? Oh, do you need access to a lender that specializes in second mortgages? We can help you with that. So we really provide the full suite of services, and the ISAs
Gotcha.
are really trying to learn as much as we can about that particular client to help understand their needs and then connect them with those service providers and vendors and partners who can help address it. Because remember, this is not just a search platform, although we do have a search platform, but we provide solutions to all 4 of those
Of
obstacles.
course.
So depending on what their concerns are, what their issues are, what their obstacles are, we have different solutions. And so the ISAs are really experts in trying to understand what it is that we can help them with. And so we can point them in the right direction and get them connected with the right people so that they can move forward with their purchase, because at the end of the day, we want to help them buy homes, right? Because if it's a referral, we're a real estate company, so we get a referral, we get to participate in that referral fee. But we generally just do want to help buyers and sellers accomplish their goals. That's really what the purpose of this is. This whole business is selling more real estate, helping buyers, helping sellers, helping agents, right? That's what this is about.
Yeah, 100%. And break this log jam, right? I
Yep.
mean, again, I'm not complaining about 2% mortgages, but that is inventory that is very hard to move right now. It's very hard to get out from under it. It's very hard for people to decide that. Transactions are down almost 30% from the peak in 2021. Transactions are down almost 30%. And I think really really believe that if more people knew about this option and were better informed and used the right tooling and the right partners and everything, man, we chip away at that logjam. I really think we would. We kind of break out in this 4 million transactions per year for the whole country, and 4.4 would be a lot better, than 4 million. I think would really really make a difference. So I think we need to get this in front of more people. So Mike, I mean, can you share a little bit about what the results have been, for well, I mean, not just your ISAs, really your company. Like, well, you guys, it's been a year, right? Year and a half almost
Yeah.
since you guys really launched. What have been some of those results that you guys have? It looks like you guys have really grown. 22 markets. Like, how many agents? Can you share how many agents you guys are servicing? You get 15,000, inbound visitors every single month. What does it look like right now?
Yeah, so I can just tell just from my own team, right? Because obviously we're recipients of that. So we capture the leads that we generate on our home market. And I can tell you just mentioned a good statistic, which I agree with, which is, most teams, most agents are doing 30% less or even greater today than they were, you say, 2 or 3 years ago at the peak. 2021, as the same data I use is about the peak when most teams, most agents sold the most amount of real estate, had the greatest production levels, and then it's been kind of slowly downhill since. And right now, I mean, just kind of what we're looking at spring of 2025, we've seen just inventory levels go up, days on market go up, homes are selling, less homes are selling across the board. So a lot of agents are even doing worse this year than they were last year. And yet I could just speak from our team. We're having a record year in sales. This year, 2025, is right now our best year ever. And I've been doing this for 16 years. 2024 was our second best year. We've only gone up since 2021. Now, AssumeList really came out in 2024. So really 24 and 25, we've really supercharged our business. And this year right now, we're having a record year in business. Now, not to say that we're doing anything special, because we have most of our agent partners who are subscribed and using AssumeList are also having great success, right? So this is replicatable, right? Our agents in all across the country that are using AssumeList are finding opportunities to contact. The language we use is AssumeList gives agents the impetus, a reason to call everybody in their database and say, hey, I have access to a tool that can help you buy a home with 2.25, 2.5% interest rates. Are you interested? Who says no? Who says no?
I would run an ad on that. Like run an ad, because I'm a huge fan of like the Facebook like homes list ad. Do you think people would not like to contact me because I have a list of all the available assumable properties, get an interest rate, that can be as low as 2.5, right? Like, I mean, if you put that in front of people, do you think they'd click on that ad? I think they would. I think they would. You know what?
They do, and we train agents.
I'm doing a webinar. I'm doing a webinar with 𝐿𝐴𝐴 agents, in a couple of weeks. I'm going to put that in the webinar, guys. I'm helping agents come up with messaging for the shifting market, right? Like if you're having trouble attracting, there's less buyers out there. Let's be honest. There's less buyers out there because of the interest rate. If you can come up with a magnet that can attract buyers to you, right? Especially if you're in one of these major metro areas, some of these military areas, even more so. Like you should be using lead magnets like this to get the conversation started and set yourself apart from all the other agents that are trying to get their attention. If there's less buyers out there, you have to have a better offer. You have to have something more interesting for them than every other buyer's agent. I think this can be a huge edge for people. Definitely underutilized. Because it still shocks me that more agents don't do this. Make it a part of their be strategic about it. Because I was in Seattle. I lived in Seattle. My home market is Seattle, and we had a lot of military up there. We had Everett Naval Base. We had a big submarine base out there. We had a huge Marine base. To the south of Seattle. So massive military market like a city like Seattle would have. And I'll be honest with you. I have my network of agents out there. I can't think of one person that has at least not bragged about this. Hey, I can do this for my clients. Like I can't think of one person and I worked in a market center for 300 agents, right? Like I know this is underutilized and it's not really being used to the max. As long as we're going to be in this high interest rate era, which I don't think it's a bad year or two. I think it's an era of, I don't even want to say high interest rates, Mike. I think we're back to normal interest rates.
Normal rates.
Normal rates. And 2019 through 21 is going to be that oddity that we can chip away at with these Assume. I just think that's, again, it could be wrong about that, knock on wood, never know. But I really don't think we're going to come back anywhere near that in the short term or the medium term to anything close to that. So this is going to continue to be an opportunity for a really long time. So Mike, I know your time is super valuable. I don't want to take too much of it. One last question. What has been the overall experience, working with the company? And if you were talking to someone that was kind of on the fence about, hiring an ISA, getting someone into this role, connecting their inbound opportunities with agents, what would you tell them?
So I would say hiring an ISA is only as good as the company that they work with or came from. And so not all ISAs are the same. And I've worked with ISAs from other companies over the years. I've been in real estate for 16 years. Trust me, I've worked with my fair share of ISAs. I have found the ISAs from PowerISA to be far and above in terms of caliber, in terms of competence, in terms of expertise, in terms of just the overall how PowerISA runs their business, to be far and away above any other ISA company I've ever worked with, hands down. I can't speak more highly of you and your business and the team that I'm now working with, right? The team of ISAs that work within my company. Yeah, I probably would not work with any other ISA company going forward, just because of my experience now working with you relative to some of the other companies I've worked with in the past. I would just offer up anybody who's interested in getting an ISA, give it a shot. You don't have to sign a 3-year contract. I mean, give it a shot for a couple months. See what it does. See how it creates leverage for you, right? I would like to say, as a real estate professional, my job is to get in front of clients. My job is to do what's called value add or revenue generating activities, right? So I don't need to be on the phone, doing conversions and solicitations and communicating with folks unless I'm actually writing offers, showing properties, right, negotiating contracts. Like, that's where my expertise is. So take advantage of, you got however many people, hundreds or thousands of people in your database. Leverage your database. Have your ISA contact them, stay in touch with them. Or if you're buying leads, have those leads be managed and facilitated through an ISA who can help create leverage, right? And so to me, the easiest way to make money in 2025 in real estate, one, sign up for AssumeList, learn the niche of assumable mortgages, and two, create leverage, right? You don't have to do everything yourself. And I think the best way to create leverage is working with an ISA.
I love that, Mike. Thank you so much. Thanks for the kind words. It's been great to see your company grow and just really, it's the times. The sign of the times is you got to adapt with the shifting market, right? Like, you've got to have a great offer for the times that we're in. And if we're in a high interest rate, log jammed market, we're in a log jammed market. 100%. Transactions, if they were normal, would be 20% more than they are right now. If we looked at the 10-year average, let me clear about that. We are 20% under what normal people want to move in the US. We're 20% below where we should be. Okay. People want to move. People want to buy, right? That's who we are as a country. Find a way to make it work, right? That's our job. That's why we're the professionals. Find a way to make it work. I think AssumeList and what you're doing is a way to make it work, right? Get people connected and get those people moving. Let's go.
I agree.
Let's get those numbers up this
Can
year.
I two parting comments? One,
go for it.
if you look at the 30-year history of mortgage rates in the United States, the 30-year trend line for mortgages over the last 30 years is between 6 and 6.5%. That's what the average is. And so right now we're right about 6.5%, give or take. So we are at the trend line. So this interest rates where they are today is not elevated. This is the normal. We're in status quo right now. So buyers and sellers out there who are thinking, oh, I'm just going to wait for interest rates to drop. Based on what? Maybe we'll drop down another 0.5 point. Maybe it's 3/4 of a point. So we're right there at the trend line. That's the first point. The second point is, I forgot my second point. Learn about assumable mortgages.
People forget that we had a whole economic crisis in 2007, 2008 with 6% mortgages.
With 6% mortgages.
And I forget how many homes were sold that year. Maybe 6.5, 7 million. This is not that strange as it seems. It's just the difference, right? The delta is what gets you. That's why you feel like, oh my goodness, interest rates are sky high. Well, not really, actually, right? Yeah.
I remember my last point, then we'll cut here, is most of the transactions, I would say more than half of the transactions that I'm generating through my knowledge of assumable mortgages end up being double-sided. And what I mean by that is I'm pulling in buyers who come to me and say, hey, Mike, I own a home right now with a 2.5 or 2.75% rate. I don't want to give up my low interest rate. I need to move. I have a new baby. I took a new job. I've got to move, but I don't want to move because I'm not willing to give up my 2.75% mortgage to go buy another home at 6.5 or 7. Like, that's just I can't do that. So what I say is, well, how about this? What if I can help you find your next home with an interest rate commensurate with what you have today? What if we go help you buy a home with a 2.5 or 2.75% rate?
What?
And they're like, what do you mean? And I start talking about assumable mortgages. And they say, well, great. If you can do that, help me buy a home. You can also help me sell my existing home. So most of my transactions, most of my clients that come to me are double-sided deals. And so that's what the power of this is.
They purchase an assumable a home with an assumable loan, and they sell their home with an assumable. So they're taking advantage of it. They sell it to someone that's qualified, and they buy one that's qualified, right? So that's awesome. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. You can do both
Or they
ends.
buy a home with an assumable mortgage, and maybe the current home isn't assumable, but they sell it anyway. So there's all
I
different
got you.
kinds of options. I've done both sides where the buyer buys a home with an assumption, then they're selling their current home as an assumption. So I've done every single situation. But the point is that this creates opportunity. Those people that I'm talking about are people that are not even in the market. They're not buying homes. They're not searching for homes because they don't want to give up their existing interest rate. But if you can come across and advertise yourself and market yourself as an expert to solve this problem, there will be people coming out of the woodwork that are entering the marketplace just to talk to you because of that expertise.
100%. It's a great marketing argument to make, right? It's because you don't know, are they going to buy with it or going to sell it? You are the person they should talk to because you have the data, you've got the knowledge, you've got the connections. It's a great way to start a relationship. So I think more agents should take advantage of that. So awesome, Mike. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. And folks, what you learned from today. Check out AssumeList and check out PowerISA while you're at it. Right. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much.